Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this edition of your favorite TV talk show on education. Today we would be talking about textbooks. We'll be talking about the selection of textbooks for our educational system, and to be precise, on primary education. With me in the studio, we have an inspector in that sector who will give us an in-depth analysis, clarifying us on how textbooks are selected for our kids in primary school. You are welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Venasius, for inviting me here to be part of this show and maybe to clarify the doubt that you and possibly many other parents and those who might be concerned with the education system in our country might somehow be raising and maybe lack the forum where to express their worry.
Actually, this is the forum where we express those, where we raise those worries, and where we seek clarification to edify our viewers. Today we are talking about textbooks. How are these textbooks selected for our schools? Is it at the whims and caprices of the school proprietors, or how do we go about them?
In principle, and what holds is that at the level of the Ministry of Basic Education, there is a National Book Commission.
Yes.
Which is charged with that task and responsibility of sampling books from various publishers, studying them, and selecting those they think are apt and respond directly to the need of primary education. Now, when they do that, you'll find out that they come out with what we call the national syllabus, which is now sent out to the various regional delegations of basic education for onward transmission to the divisional inspectorates, and now they are forwarded to schools. What you must realize here is at the level of the National Books Commission, very many books come in per subject, because each editor sits and writes what he thinks is appropriate for the subject matter for the class and publishes. Now, when the National Book Commission assembles all these, they study and come out now with the national book list. They send it down, and when it reaches down the schools, every head of institution, every education secretariat is expected now to exploit the national book list, because per subject there is always a variety of books.
Yes.
Per subject there's always a variety of books proposed in the national book list.
Yeah.
So when the educational secretariats or heads of establishments, proprietors of lay private schools, they are expected to work as per the prescriptions of the National Books Commission on the national book list.
Okay, please, before we get there, we have to indicate to our viewers that our guest is an inspector with the Catholic Education Secretariat here in Douala. But before we get there, we want to find out these textbooks. Who writes it? This commission, do they really go back to the biography, the educational background of these authors? Is it anybody gets up, write what he calls a textbook? Do you have to go back to such type of?
I cannot rule out your reasoning on this subject, because now the phenomenon we are living is everybody wants to be a writer, a publisher, an editor.
Yes.
Because we are coming to realize that in Cameroon, education and book writing is becoming a source of already
a business.
Okay. Where once the National Book Commission, as I'm saying, is not strict, any type of thing will be found on the national book list. So whatever we think, once we think that we give credence to the National Book Commission, we at the same time challenge them to take that responsibility very, very serious, because anybody can come out with anything now and want maybe to force into the
why I ask this question is, you see some books you see a new book in the book list this year, next year it disappears. And I remember when I was in primary school some years back, we used to carry books.
You use a book and your junior ones.
We give it to your family and it can go for 3, 4, 5, 6 years.
Yeah.
And I believe that by then teachers had the mastery of that book, of the content of that book. But this year is you have a new book this year, next year a different book. So does it depend on who writes and his influence on that book commission, or is there any guiding principle? I wanted to go out to what is the guiding objective for the selection of these books?
You rightly say, once a book appears on the book list, it's expected to be there for a minimum of 3 years.
Okay.
That is the guideline.
Yes.
It's expected to be in the program for a minimum of 3 years. But as I'm saying, what obtains is there is a variety of books that come out in the national book list and goes down to the institutions. There can be some manipulation at that level. There could be some manipulation at that level where maybe this year, because an editor thinks that my book is in the national book list, he goes back now and starts lobbying with the institutions. Please prioritize my book. And when the institutional heads are not really very careful, they also fall prey to that system of putting a book this year and next year you find them wanting to change it. Actually, as I say, it penalizes parents. It penalizes parents. I want to agree with you there 100%. But where the educational authorities at various levels, they really take cognizance of the realities of such things. I think such phenomena are being controlled. That now gives a lot of work also to the inspectorates. Because when the inspectorates say they follow up, they are supposed to follow up to see what is the evolution of textbooks, everything that has to do with the pedagogic life of the school. The inspectorates are supposed to follow it up. So that gives also another challenge and a responsibility to them to make sure that a book is put in the school's book list.
Okay, let me touch this point from another angle. When you see, I have a child who is in class 5, and this child in class 5, if I should decide to change this child from this school, or I am transferred from here, maybe to Douala Senkiem, I'm going to Bonamosadi, and I have to go with my child. The reality on the ground is, I go there and I meet different books. What I wanted to ask here is, are these books, are they like harmonized? Is it that those who are in class 1, they have a particular set of books that they are using? Those who are in class 2, they have a particular set of books they are using? Or it depends on the school. Can you decide to choose book 1, book A in your school, and then in my school I decide to choose book C? Is there any...
That's what I was explaining. That when the national book list comes out, it comes out with a variety of books per subject.
Okay.
And I take for example the case of mathematics in class 5. The national book list can say the classes, all classes 5s for this year, or they can come out with maybe foundation mathematics, mathematics in practice, Cosmos. Those are 3 different mathematics textbooks recommended by the state in the national book list. Now when they reach here, maybe the level at the level of public schools, it could be harmonized. Could be harmonized. But when it starts going out to the lay private schools that that dominate.
Actually,
because you go to statistics in Douala, you find that the lay private schools dominate. Littoral region does not have it has almost around 500 public schools, but how many lay private schools?
Really?
So you see the dominance is there. When it goes now at the level of lay private schools, you will find a proprietor in Bonamosadi. Maybe the author of basic or foundation mathematics might be a relative. So in his school he will prefer basic mathematics.
Really, yeah.
Or he will prefer foundation mathematics. The proprietor is this.
Yes.
Or the author is of Cosmos. He has a particular affiliation or those type of things. You start finding those sentiments, they start coming to play.
Okay.
You get the point?
Yes.
So now it becomes very difficult to have a kind of harmonized and uniform book list for all the institutions. But the essential thing now is what each school is using as books. Does it conform with the stipulated what the national book list
the objective of that committee?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I come back to that same point, the question I was raising here with the background of the authors.
Yeah.
If, like the 3 textbooks you have indicated, I believe that that commission would have judged that they are able to meet the objectives of the national or of the education committee. Right?
Yes.
Cool. Now, if we take these books and school A decides to take book A, school B decides to take book C. Now, is there a way that, because there are some schools that imposes a particular book, they like ignore the book list, national book list, and impose their own books. So what I wanted to ask is there are there any checks and controls to make sure that schools operate within the national book list that comes out?
Now, that's a very good and pertinent question. The first thing is, as I say, the National Book Commission is a part of the Ministry of Basic Education.
Yes.
And when they publish books in the national book list, they are the books they have judged and validated that the schools should use.
Yes.
Now, when they come down, if some other schools decide to walk out of the national book list, that is a pedagogic crime.
All right.
It's a pedagogic offense.
Okay.
According to which we should be followed up. And that is where I came to say the appropriate inspectorates have that responsibility of following up and making sure. Now I come back, for example, to the situation that holds with us, for example, at the Catholic Education Secretariat. At the beginning of before the end of the long holidays, the Catholic Education Secretariat is open. One of the things we do is we take the national book list. We go through, we consider how long each book have been used have been in our program. If we find a book that we deem necessary, because as we also take from the national book list, we send down to the field.
Yes.
We listen to comments from our teachers.
Okay.
What do they think about each and every book?
Yeah.
For example, now we have a book that we are using. Therefore, we put it for 3 years. For the past 3 years, teachers are complaining. But since it was already in the book for the first year, we already put it. It is there. And maybe at the end of the 3rd year, we can see if we maintain it or we put it up. But if we put it this year and next year, last year, we put the year before last. If we had to change it last year, we would have penalized parents, as we are saying. So at the level of the Catholic Education Secretariat, we are very strict on that. And when we even go out on inspections, we inspect even the textbooks that they are using in class. We try to see which book are you using here, which book are you using here, which book are you using here.
Now, selecting the books, I believe that you people also work, and most of the members of the book commission, they also work on the availability of these books, because you understand that most parents, especially Anglophone books, is a problem here in Douala, because parents see a book on the book list, having the book is a problem. I think people also look at those kind of setbacks to make sure that the books are available.
Now there comes a problem where, to every coin has always
the
two
other
sides.
Yes.
The question now that every one of you and me, we are not members of the National Book Commission.
Yes.
So when they choose books, do they consider the stock, the supply? That's the question you and me we should ask them.
And that's why we are raising it out to our public, because they are those who really complain that we cannot see this book, both in the primary and secondary as well.
But when you ask, they say no, but you have other options.
Okay.
As I say, you have other options, but then they too could have other options
to
before
select.
putting. So I really, the point I'm really impressed with the point you are raising, and it's really a call to be more cautious at every level.
Yes.
In selecting the books, because we find out that education this time around is having very many.
All right, let us keep on with our discussion. We want to look at are these books done with respect to the age, learning ability of the pupils? I mean, the book you select for class 1, for nursery 1,
do they respond to the cognitive abilities
of these kids?
pupils?
That is my worry.
Yeah. Now, what is the objective of the book? The book is a guide, and the workbook is an activity book. Do they respond to the cognitive abilities of the child? I would say at our level, when we have the variety in front of us, we look at the exercises, we look at the explanation. One thing we must not also rule out here is the fact that no knowledge is useless.
That's a point.
No knowledge is useless.
No knowledge is useless. That's true.
Yeah.
But then knowledge is geared toward attaining a particular
objective.
Goal.
I am coming. I understand.
Okay.
Say one thing we must not rule out here is that no knowledge is useless.
Yes.
Now, it depends now on the pedagogic aptitudes of the actors in the field.
Okay.
Because it is needless for me to take what I know a class 1 child will not take in. I take class 3 lessons to class 1 child. The books spelled out for class 1, we acknowledge that they are just children coming out from the nursery who are doing pictorial lessons. So at the level of class 1, level 1, beginning of primary education, we are very, very careful, because we acknowledge that in primary education, after the nursery, class 1 and 2, levels 1, they are very, very delicate classes where we put the base. So we make sure that everything that has to do with putting that base should be done with a lot of caution. Selection of books inclusive.
Okay, when we look at some new, I call it new because when I was in school, when I was at that level, when you were at that level, we never had things like computer science. They never existed. But now, I must confirm with you that when I took my daughter's textbook, she is in class 1. They are talking about computer science. They are talking about modern communication tools, traditional communication tools. I will tell you that I did it when I started journalism the first year. Now I try to like talk to this child, let her know. For me to come down, bring it down to her level was a problem. So I saw how teachers are suffering, and that's why I was asking whether we select these books in relation to the age, learning ability of the kids. So computer science in class 1, is it worth?
What do we do in class 1? It's not computer science.
Yes.
The first problem begins from the appellation.
Okay.
We do information and communication technology. ICT.
Okay.
That is what we do in the primary school.
Yes.
It's when they move out of the primary school, you can start getting into computer science, when you start going into the real core of the matter.
Yes.
Here we are giving elementary knowledge about ICT on ICT.
Okay.
If at the level of class 1 the child can identify this is a computer, this is a gong, this is this, which effectively they are doing, I think it is basic knowledge which is appropriate for them at that level. As they move ahead, you start talking about communication tools, how the basic operational principles of a computer, just very basic operational principles of computer, because we know that computer today is a necessity. We have children before they go out of class 6, they are already manipulating machines in their homes, thanks to the knowledge we give them from the very basic level. But now one thing you must realize is when you try to make allusion to when you and I were in class 1, and we must know that pedagogy evolves and curriculum designers are always at work.
Yes.
As pedagogy is evolving, curriculum designer always there's a constant need to meet up with the demands of time. At your time and my time, internet was a far-fetched idea in our villages.
Really?
But today in our village, the child sits there and sends a message on WhatsApp. So the child who grew in our time, the way we grew at that time is not the realities of the children growing now. So we must train the children to adapt to the realities of today.
Okay, I want to let's throw stones again at these inspectors.
Yeah.
When we are talking about facts and realities, and when you see inspectors, when you people go down to the field, how much of the time do you sit with the teachers to get the feedback from the difficulties they have in the textbooks they are using?
After every inspection session,
yes,
when we go, we have it in two phases. There is the classroom visit, where you follow up the teaching, learning process, the documents, and maybe difficulties that I encountered. That is always the first phase. When that ends, when we have gone round, we now come back and hold the second phase of it, which is bringing the teachers together. In the first phase, during the classroom visits, I might meet individual difficulties. I meet a particular teacher with a particular difficulty that I think I can handle there. I address it to him there and then. Say this thing like this, this thing like this, this is for respect of his professional person, his human person, and all that of things. I just said this thing like this. I think it should be like this.
Okay.
Then after that, if you see a problem that is recurrent, now when we must have brought them together to give them final guidelines, appreciation of the teaching learning process in the school, all those type of things you find that are recurrent, you can address them there on the general note.
Okay. Now let's come back to the point where these books are wrongly made. The choice of these textbooks are wrongly made. What is the impact?
The impact is now, first of all, if the teachers, together with the teachers, we discover that the books are not, the first thing you must realize is the fact that the book is on the
book list
does not confine the teacher to only that book.
Normally.
Because today the basic principle of teaching is when you cease to learn, you should cease to teach.
Yes.
So we challenge and encourage every teacher to do further research. You take a topic and the book that you have, maybe recommended on the book list, doesn't give you maybe adequate information. That doesn't stop you from doing research in any other book. That's why we encourage all teachers to own personal libraries.
Okay.
So as I'm saying, the books that are chosen for the book list does not confine the teacher only
to that particular book.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we want to look at a way forward to, because there are parents who are complaining that our educational system is more of a business than forming the human person. How do we address those proprietors who mortgage the future of these kids given to them with their affiliations, family, friends, kind of, because you wrote a book and I have a school, your book is automatically on my book list whether it meets the standards or not. What about those proprietors?
Venantius, I must tell you that to look at education from that point of view, I wouldn't say no. What I think is, when you look at the society now, there is what we call the proliferation of schools. Somebody gets up in the morning, rents 2 rooms,
and opens a school.
You think that's the way he wants to lodge, accommodate his family. The next day you are coming, you find a school there.
Yes.
What criteria does the government use to authorize these schools?
The creation of these schools.
Creation of schools.
Yes.
Especially lay private schools. Because when you say that, I will not deny. How does the government follow up?
That is our bone of contention.
That is our bone of contention.
Yes.
So to say the government has, because the government in the country is the primary educator.
Correct. We are just sharing in their educational process.
Yes. We are assisting the government to educate the citizens. The government is the primary educator, and that's why the government, the state, is the body that lays down the educational program, and everybody just seeks to follow what the state wants.
Okay.
So at the level of authorizing schools, what does the state take into consideration?
Okay.
What degree of follow-up is being done?
Okay, now let's look at now. We are almost rounding up because of time constraint.
Yeah.
A way forward. What should we expect this book commission, these inspectors who are supposed to select them at regional levels, and then these pedagogic inspectors who are supposed to do a kind of follow-up on the ground, in the field? What is the way forward for them? What are we taking it to them as a way forward?
If I should summarize, what I will call the way forward is just a call to professional consciousness.
Correct.
That at every level, each person knows exactly what he or she is expected to do and does it at least for the love and fear of God. Because our country today is what I would not like to mention. But if we could maybe really be professionally conscious of what we are supposed to do, we know that we have the future and the destiny of innocent kids to shape at every level, and we have no responsibility to mortgage it. I think very many of such things will be handled.
Okay, we are about rounding up because of time. Our time is up, and let me just ask one before we go, please. Every member of this book commission, is it a pedagogue? Is it a pedagogue?
Good question. The commission is in Yaoundé and all of us are here. But I want to believe that everybody in the Ministry of Basic Educational Ministries should be pedagogues.
Okay.
Except that what obtains that we take a carpenter and put to be
in charge of education. Okay.
Except that be the case. I don't know. I'm not in Yaoundé.
Yes. Okay.
But I suppose that every member of that commission should be a pedagogue.
And should know what they are doing.
And should know what they are doing.
Thank you, sir, for
thank you very much
respecting our invitation. Ladies and gentlemen, we are come to the end of this edition of this program, and we are going out with this word from our inspector. He says, what should guide us is the professional consciousness that we need to have and the love for the future of the children who are under our care. It is with that we come to the end of this edition. We would be coming back again next week for another touching issue again to talk on education. Keep watching programs here at DBS. God bless you all.